right? So fifth normal form is based on joint dependency, right? So whenever you are going to decompose a relation capital R into sub relations R1, R2, and R3, Rn, and so on, right? And whenever you decompose a complex relation into fragmented relations, and when you join them back, there should not be any non-additive joint decomposition into the relation. We say that it satisfies the requirements of fifth normal form, right? So for example, consider this relation R. So it contains the information about the supplier, the components supplied, the parts supplied by the supplier, and the project for which the components or parts are being supplied by the supplier, right? So the first record denotes that the supplier S1 supplies part P1 for the project R1, right? And similarly, supplier S1 supplies a part P2 for a project R2. And similarly, supplier S2 supplies a part P1 for a project R1. And supplier S2 supplies a part P1 for a project R2, right? So what we do is that in fifth normal form is that I will continue to decompose a complex relation into fragmented relation, and we ensure that there should not be any non-additive join, right? So for example, so this relation we are going to decompose into three fragments, fragmented relation. So R is decomposed into three fragments: R1 with the attributes supplier parts, R2 with the attributes supplier project, and R3 with the attributes parts and projects, right? So once you decompose the complex relation into fragmented relation, you get this records, right? So S1, so S1 with part P1, S1 with part P2, S2 with part P1, and so on. And similarly, relation R2 supplier and project, S1 with project R1, S1 with project R2, S2 with project R1, and S2 with project R2. And regarding the components, P1 with project part P1 with project R1, P2 with R2, P1 with R2, and so on. So once you go for joining the fragmented relations, so you should get back the original relation, right? So that's the properties of decomposition. Whenever you decompose a complex relation into fragmented relation, and when you combine them back using a natural join, you should get back the original relation without any additional tuples, or data should also be not lost during the process of decomposition, right? So here, once you combine the fragmented relations, you get some additional records being added, right? So for example, you combine the fragmented relations R1 and R2, so you get S1 P1 R1, right? Then S1 P1 R2, right? Right, sorry, I think we are combining the S1 P1 R1, S1 P1 R2, and S1 P2. So we are going to combine the relations R1 and R3. So you get S1 P1 R1, S1 P2 R2, S2 P1, S2 P1 R1, right? So here you are going to get some additional records that are being generated, right? So S1 P2 R2 is an S1 P2 R2 exists. S1 P1 R2 does not exist in the base relation. right? So due to additive join, we get some extra record, right? So if you don't get any additional record, it's known as non-additive lossless join, right? So for a relation should be in phi NF to meet the requirements of a fifth normal form, the relation should be in 4NF, and if there exists no joint dependency. So if joint dependency does not exist, we say that the particular relation is in phi NF. Else, if joint dependency exists, if only if there is a trivial functional dependency, or all fragmented relations are all Ri is a super key, then we say that the relation is in phi NF. Else, we say that the relation is not in fifth normal form, right? So let me brief you the information again. So for a relation should be in phi NF, it should meet the requirements of 4NF. A relation should be in 4NF, and there should not be any joint dependency between the attributes in a relation. There exists no joint dependency between the different fragmented relations in a relation. We say that the relation meets the requirements of fifth normal form. So here the idea is that you are going to decompose a complex relation into smaller fragments, and you need to ensure that whenever you decompose it and whenever you combine back the fragmented relations back into the original relation, there should not be any non-additive records that are being created during the joint decomposition. So here the example is that you have supplier supplying parts to different projects. So we are going to decompose this relation into fragmented relations R1, R2, and R3, right? So once you combine back the fragmented relations, once you do natural join of the fragmented relations R1 and R3, you get some additional records that are being generated that are not present in the base relation, right? So you have R1 natural join R2, you have S1 P1 R1, S1 P1 R2, right? So S1 P1 R2 is not a valid record in the base relation. So due to this additive joins, we get some extra record, right? So if you don't get any additional record, we say that it meets the requirements of fifth normal form, right? So since we have some additional record is being created, we say that it's a non-additive lossless join, right? So for a relation should be in fifth normal form, it should meet the requirements of 4NF, and there should not be any joint dependency exist. We say that it's in phi NF. Even if joint dependency exists, if only trivial joint dependency, we can claim it as a fifth normal form. Or if all the attributes in a relation Ri is a super key, then we say that it conforms to the requirements of phi NF. Else we say that it's not in fifth normal form, right? So this is about working with advanced normal forms 4NF and phi NF, right? So 4NF, for a relation to be in 4NF, it should meet the requirements of third normal form, and it should meet the requirements of Boy's code normal form, and there should not be any multi-value dependency among the attributes in a relation. We say that it meets the requirements of 4NF. And for a relation to be in phi NF, it should meet the requirements of fourth normal form, and there should not be any joint dependency between the attributes in a relation. So it should be a non-additive join, right? So whenever you are going to decompose a fragmented relation into smaller fragments, and if you perform natural join of the fragmented relations, you should be able to get back the original relation without any additive information. Then we say that it conforms to the fifth normal form.